So there's this guy named Benny Morris. Okay. Now, Benny Morris knows a few things about Israel. All right. Knows a couple of things here and there. All right. Um, and there's a guy named Mehdi Hasan who knows a couple things about Israel too. And Al Jazeera was able to put together an event where Mehdi Hasan and Benny Morris sat down to talk about their differing views on Israel and Gaza. And I am frankly fascinated by this, and I want to see the conversation. It's my first time wading into it. I haven't pre-watched this. This did come out a month ago, so it's going to be dealing with some probably outdated circumstances going on in Gaza right now. The events going on in the West Bank right now, it's horrific right now. For those who don't know, Israel is doing its largest incursion into the occupied West Bank. Benjamin Netanyahu is effectively erasing the existence of the West Bank, and politicians in Israel are referring to it as Judea and Samaria rather than by the West Bank, which implies that they are intending to annex the West Bank in violation of international law. And it is horrific right now. During this largest incursion in 20 years, they're ripping apart the streets of the occupied West Bank and doing hundreds of millions of dollars in damage with armored bulldozers. It's pretty devastating stuff, and we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. But I just want to let you all know they're not going to be talking about that because this was a month ago. So, that being said, here we go.
Israel will fight until we destroy Hamas's military capabilities, end its rule in Gaza, and bring all our hostages home.
Since Hamas's attack on October the 7th, Israel has been laying waste to the Gaza Strip. Tens of thousands killed, and the Israeli government now accused of committing genocide. But what can the history of the conflict tell us about how we got?
Yeah, one guy in America armors a bulldozer, and we talk about it for decades afterwards and call it the Killdozer incident. Israel just does that every day.
Here. My guest tonight is the famously provocative Israeli historian Benny Morris. His work once documented many of the crimes committed by Israel in 1948, but his critics say he now justifies those crimes. I'm Mehdi Hasan, and I'm here in London's legendary Free Speech Society, Conway Hall, to go head-to-head with Benny Morris. I'll challenge him on his support for the war on Gaza and ask him why he thinks accusations of genocide are absurd.
The thing is, Benny Morris, by my estimation, I've seen him engage in debates and conversations on this topic before. He supports Israel, but he is also kind of confined by the sense of professionalism to his career as a historian. And he, as a result, I think he's one of the Zionist figures most susceptible to just being able to be dog walked to a position that is well, let me put it this way. Can we yes, here we go. Basically, this is every conversation with Benny Morris on this topic. Aren't you Patrick Starr? Yep. And this is your ID? Yep. I found this ID in this wallet, and if that's the case, this must be your wallet. That makes sense to me. Then take it. It's not my wallet. This is basically the conversation in a nutshell.
Tonight, I'll be joined by our panel of experts. Daniel Levy, a former Israeli peace negotiator and president of the US Middle East Project. Diana Boutou, the Palestinian lawyer and former advisor to the PLO. And Emmanuel Navon, an Israeli lecturer of diplomatic studies at Tel Aviv University.
Like, solid lineup of professionals here.
Benny Morris, thank you for joining me on Head to Head. You are
Also, if you guys like this, there's another conversation Mehdi Hasan had with like the ambassador to China, and I've only seen parts of it, but it also looks like it could be pretty good.
a supporter, a defender of Israel's current war in Gaza, which began in its current form after the atrocities on October the 7th, and which has since killed more than 38,000 Palestinians, including 15,000 children,
I'll have to check it
displaced more than 1 million people, made Gaza uninhabitable per the UN, and is being investigated as a possible genocide at the International Court of Justice. A lot of people around the world think it's a genocide. I happen to think it's a genocide, but you have called that accusation absurd. Why?
Well, I once investigated a real genocide by Muslim Turks against the Christian communities of Turkey around the year 1900. Some 2 million Christians were killed at the time by Muslim Turks. And that's what a genocide actually looks like. What's happening in Gaza is a war. It's a war in which there are a lot of collateral deaths among Gazans. The war started, of course.
That is such an interesting way of phrasing that. What's happening there is a war with lots of collateral deaths among Gazans. Okay.
By the Hamas from Gaza in a giant massacre on October 7th. And the only way to respond to that, and any country would have responded to that, more or less in the same fashion, I think, was to try and go after the Hamas. But the Hamas was embedded in the population, as you know, used the schools, the UNRWA schools, the hospitals as bases, as places where they stocked their ammunition, their guns themselves, hid in tunnels underneath these schools, in apartment buildings. And this all involved collateral damage, which of course the Hamas knew it was going to ignite by killing 1,200 Israelis on the 7th of October. I myself have problems with the war as it's being waged, but genocide it definitely isn't. The aim here is not to kill as many Palestinians.
That's not the definition of genocide.
Oh, Mehdi. I love Mehdi. He's pugilistic in his conversations with these figures on these important topics, and I absolutely appreciate that. In a world, especially in America, where we are surrounded by media that just is like so docile in the face of people saying unspeakably horrid things.
Genocide.
You
wrote a book on genocide. That's not the definition of genocide.
It's one of the definitions.
It's not.
Try and kill.
It's not based on numbers, the definition.
It's also based on intent and on numbers.
It's based on the intent.
Yes.
To destroy, to kill in whole or in part.
There's no intent here.
That's
as far as I know, look, I'm not.
I just want to...
I wonder if he'd concede it's at the very least an ethnic cleansing.
I'm not a government spokesman. You seem to be presenting me as a government spokesman.
How did I present you in a government spokesman? I asked you for your view on the war. I didn't say anything. We'll come to the government. I'm just asking about your view right now. The definition of genocide, you wrote a book on it, is nothing to do with how many people you kill. So it's not a numbers game.
It's also a numbers game.
The ICC chief prosecutor has asked for arrest warrants, not just for Hamas leaders, but for the Israeli prime minister and the defense minister for war crimes and crimes against humanity. And he says he has mountains of evidence. We've all seen with our own eyes the Israelis in Gaza commit war crimes on camera, kill unarmed people who are carrying white flags, blow up apartment buildings, drop 2,000-pound bombs on crowded refugee camps. Can we at least agree, Benny, even if we're going to disagree on genocide, that Israel has committed numerous war crimes since the Hamas war crimes on October the 7th?
I'm fairly sure there have been war crimes. But the war itself is not a war crime, as the Hamas attack on Israel on the 7th of October was. It was a war crime from beginning to end. The aim was to kill as many civilians as possible, which they did, in accordance with the Hamas charter, which is to kill basically every Jew you can get hold of in Palestine.
But I didn't ask about the aim. I asked about the acts that are being committed.
As I said, probably there have been, as in all wars, war crimes.
You accept there have been war crimes?
Yes.
So you would support an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu?
I didn't say that.
Why?
First,
Dude, he's so slippery, dog.
firstly, there hasn't been an arrest warrant.
I know, there's been a
which has
request from the
issued.
ICC chief
Okay.
prosecutor.
So far, they haven't issued it. I don't know if you can hold a prime minister responsible if a sergeant kills several unarmed people intentionally.
You don't think the Israeli Air Force bombing apartment buildings, refugee camps, mosques, cemeteries, hospitals, schools, universities, libraries?
Firstly, it hasn't bombed, as far as I know, hospitals. They have attacked... as far
Literally
as,
no...
Dude. That, as far as I know, is doing so much labor here, it deserves its own union.
Literally no expert agrees with you on that.
That's not true. What you're saying is not true. The only hospital which I remember being bombed was by a rocket fired by the Islamic Jihad.
Oh my God.
Oh, that was the only one. That was the only one. Only one hospital's been attacked. Just real quick. Here, this is as of May from the European Commission, an official website of the European Union, from the European Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Operations from May of this year. Let's see here. Since the start of the conflict in Gaza, following the brutal terrorist attacks by Hamas on October 7th, 31 out of 36 hospitals have been damaged or destroyed. Among the destroyed is the Al-Shifa Hospital, the largest medical complex in Gaza, which remains today completely out of service. And that was back in May of this year.
By mistake.
Oh
That's
my
as far
God.
as I remember. Israel has raided hospitals.
Let me
talk.
But, you know, maybe all of Europe is lying. You know, who can say?
Israel has raided hospitals, but with infantry.
Let me ask you this
found
question.
Hamas people in there, Hamas headquarters, inside hospitals, under hospitals.
Actually, we've never seen the headquarters that Benjamin Netanyahu put a beautiful Bond movie video out for. We've never actually seen that from underneath Al-Shifa. It's been several months. We're still waiting for that. So on the 31st of October, according to Human Rights Watch, Israeli forces unlawfully attacked a 6-story residential building, killing 106 civilians, including 54 children, without warning. 4 strikes, completely demolished. Human Rights Watch found no evidence of a military target in the vicinity, making the strike unlawful, indiscriminate under the laws of war. Israeli authorities have provided no justification for the attack.
The Hamas always hides their own casualties.
Even the Israelis didn't say that they were hiding in the apartment building.
I don't.
You said you don't want to be a spokesman for the government. You're offering a better defense of the government than the government is.
I don't know. I don't know the particulars of that particular attack. It could be that there was a war crime committed there. It could also be that there were hundreds of Hamas fighters in the building along.
They just all happened. Hamas is just so good at hiding amongst the civilian population, and yet they put all of their fighters in one building to be smote by the Israeli military. Okay, sure, bud.
Alongside, it could be you.
Okay, so let's.
Have you ever seen footage? Have you ever seen footage coming out of the Gaza Strip which shows a Hamas fighter dead? Have you ever seen that?
How much?
All you see is civilians.
Benny,
because they're hiding. They're hiding.
I'm not a Palestinian journalist. I'm a foreign journalist, and guess what? We're not allowed in by the Israelis.
They are hiding their casualties.
So let me ask you this question. So then, I agree we should allow people in. Do you agree with me?
I agree with you. Let me tell you something about the Israeli Air Force, if we're talking about this. Each mission of the Israeli Air Force, and it's probably the most accurate and efficient arm of the Israeli military is checked beforehand by a lawyer, etc., to see if there are actual is there evidence, evidence of
I'm so glad
Hamas
you're pointing
being
this
in there.
out, because it's not a rogue operation. It goes all the way up. See, we can indict Netanyahu for these attacks because it's gone up the chain of command. It's not a rogue sergeant.
No,
It's not a rogue sergeant. We agree. All right. You say it's not genocide. Can we at least agree that it's genocidal rhetoric and genocidal intent from various members of the...
Hey, fun fact, according to the World Health Organization, amongst all functional hospitals currently active in Gaza, or medical facilities currently active in Gaza, there are fewer than 1,500 beds. Roughly about 1 for every 60 injured people. For every 1 bed, there are 60 injured and dying people.
The Israeli government.
Yes.
We agree that the rhetoric from Netanyahu and Herzog and Smotrich,
Yes, I forgot that the H in WHO stands for Hamas. I forgot. My bad.
is genocidal rhetoric.
Some of the ministers, I'm not sure about Herzog's quotes, and I'm not sure about what Netanyahu said, but some of the
Netanyahu
ministers
said Amalek, Benny. You know what
used the word
Amalek means.
Amalek. I don't know if that's the same as genocide, but
let's take a look at this. Amalek, described in the Hebrew Bible as the enemy nation of the Israelites. The name Amalek can refer to descendants of Amalek, the grandson of Esau, or anyone who lived in the territories of Canaan, or North African descendants of Ham, the son of Noah. Let's see. Let's see here. Do we have a... Where is it? I wanted a quote, and I'm not finding it here. But basically, for those of you who are unaware, invoking Amalek is basically saying we are going to kill every man, woman, and child, and every animal that belongs unto them in the region. That's like what invoking the cultural touchstone of Amalek means in Israeli society. No, like, it is... Annie, you are completely and utterly correct. This is what William Lane Craig, a Christian apologist, refers to as basically the divine command morality crux. And what that means is basically, if God tells you to do something, even if it seems utterly and completely horrific, even if God commands you to slit the throat of a newborn baby, that is the morally good thing to do. So if God commands it, then it is good, because God is definitionally good. So God commanding something can only be good. So if God commands a genocide, well then, it's a good and righteous genocide. That's essentially it. It doesn't go any farther than that. Now you might reasonably ask, how could you be sure God has actually commanded such a thing? And excellent question. That seems to be kind of one of the core weaknesses of divine command morality. But,
killing every man, woman, and child,
I don't know.
and the donkeys.
Oh, hey. You know, why did I even bother to look it up? Mehdi Hasan, 10 steps ahead of me, okay?
Listen, there's something absurd about this line of questioning. If Israel was intent on genocide, would you let me talk?
Hold on. Can you let him speak?
Would you let me talk?
Can you let him speak? Yes. Guys, we are going to have to stop the entire show, and you will all have to go home if we do not have some order. Benny, please finish your point.
If there was a genocidal intent in the war making in Gaza, there would be not 30,000 or... Incidentally, the numbers are all issued by Hamas. We don't know how true they are. But if there was...
Oh, so they could be higher.
Genocidal intent by the Israeli government with the Israeli military machine to commit genocide in Gaza, there would not be 30,000 or 20,000 Gazans dead. There would be hundreds of thousands of Gazans dead.
I'm sure.
That is called genocide, and that's not what's happening in Gaza.
Benny, we've already discussed that's not the definition of genocide. But
this is like saying in This is like saying in 1934, oh, well, the German war machine, if they wanted to kill all of the Jews, they could have by now, so clearly there's no genocide going on. Sure, there's a concentration camp already opened at Dachau, but, you know, we're not killing all of them fast enough, so clearly no genocide is happening. Like, obviously that's a ridiculous argument. Like, you don't just like press the button on like, yeah, full liquidation of the problem. You know, famously, for those of you who don't know much about World War II, the Nazis tried other means of getting rid of Jewish people. They tried deporting them en masse, you know, mass ethnic cleansings. And they found that it was too expensive to do that, or too difficult logistically to do that, or, you know, too diplomatically complicated to do that. And so they had the Jewish question. That's where it comes from. And that's where that term comes from. And so the final solution was the final solution to the Jewish question, i.e., instead of trying to deport them and do a mass ethnic cleansing, they would simply kill them. They would simply kill all of them. And we have had disturbing reports from the Netanyahu administration that there have been plans being floated around, specifically among the more fanatical supporters of Netanyahu and Likud, that the solution to the Palestinian question in Gaza might simply be to, well, maybe not kill all of them, but thin the herd so that there are few enough Palestinians left in Gaza that other countries would be more willing to take them in. That is absolutely true. I've covered it on the channel. This was widely reported in Israeli media, and it's deeply disturbing that in the face of this kind of overwhelming coverage. By the way, if you want good coverage of what's happening in Gaza, go to Israeli media. Israeli media sources are far more critical of Benjamin Netanyahu right now than any American sources whatsoever. Yeah, Haaretz is doing wonderful coverage. And it is, yeah. All of this has been reported widely in Israeli media.
But okay, let me ask you this.
That's not your definition
No,
of
it's
genocide.
the 1948 Genocide Convention.
There's lots of different...
Forget it? Forget the 1948 Genocide Convention?
There are lots of definitions.
That's not
of
true,
genocide.
Benny. There's
Yes,
only
sir.
one. There's only one. It's the 1948 Genocide Convention.
That sounds dogmatic. There's only one. There's only one truth, the Hamas truth. Sound the same.
Is the 1948...
Dude, I'm actually shocked that we are less than 10 minutes in and Benny Morris is already completely unhinged.
Genocide Convention, a Hamas charter. Is everything Hamas, Benny?
If there's a genocidal side in this battle, it is the Hamas.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Just look at its charter, read the words there, reads what it says about
by the way, Benny,
what they intend to do to the Jews.
Benny,
that's what is
Benny,
important.
I've interviewed people from Hamas and I've asked them about the charter. I'm interviewing you right now.
I'm sure they tell you it's a nice document.
I'm sure they do. Israeli minister called Avi Dikter, member of the Security Cabinet, he said, we're now rolling out the Gaza Nakba. He was referring to the Nakba, the catastrophe of 1948, when an estimate...
The Nakba, by the way, was a mass ethnic cleansing event, which I would encourage you all to remember what I just relayed to you about the trajectory of how the Nazis dealt with the question at play. Turns out Israel's mass ethnic cleansing hasn't worked either.
Estimated 700,000 Palestinians were driven from their homes. You famously documented a lot of that back in the 80s. You undermined a lot of Israeli propaganda that said they just fled on their own. So whether it's the 1948 Nakba or the 2024 Gaza Nakba, to quote Avi Dikter, for Palestinians, Zionism is Nakba. It is ethnic cleansing. Surely you, of all people, can recognize that.
I'm not sure I can recognize that, no. Yeah, you keep putting words in my mouth. Zionism's intent was to establish a Jewish state in the area called Palestine, or the land of Israel. Initially, the Zionists...
Man, that's a lot of couching your... Can we listen to that back?
Palestine, the intent was to establish a Jewish state.
A Jewish state
in the area called Palestine.
In the area of Palestine.
The land of Israel.
Of the land of Israel. It's a interesting formulation of how that works.
Initially, the Zionists wanted to establish a Jewish state on the whole land of...
Yeah, turns out ethno-states are bad.
Israel, or all of Palestine. 1937, 1938, Zionism changed and said, we can't have all of the land. There are lots of Palestinians here. Let's share it with the Palestinians. In 1937, the British Peel Commission proposed the partition of Palestine between the two peoples living in it. The Palestinians said no and continued their war against Britain and the Zionists. The Zionists said yes to the partition proposal by Peel. The international community repeated the idea of the partition of Palestine between the Jews and the Arabs in 1947, November, the famous Resolution 181. The Jews said yes to the UN partition resolution.
Yo, this lady looks like she's about had it.
Resolution of 1947, accepting it.
Who are the three people they keep cutting camera to? They're experts in various aspects of this conflict. And I believe at some point in the conversation, they're going to be called upon to like ask questions.
They would get some of Palestine, the Palestinian Arabs would get the other part, and the Palestinians said no and started shooting the next day, killing Jews.
So this is one of the reasons I wanted to interview you, because...
Yes. Because I know some of the history.
You do know some of the history, and you said they all share. But the problem is, I don't know which Benny Morris I'm speaking to, because you're saying they all wanted to share the land. And yet, I have a book here that says, on the most basic level, Jewish colonization meant expropriation and displacement. Zionist ideology and practice were necessarily and elementally expansionist. Zionism was a colonizing and expansionist ideology. That's Righteous Victims by Benny Morris.
I know. And
Well played, Mehdi Hasan. Well played.
You can respond.
I'm glad that the audience is cheering things I've written.
Because you were right in 2001. So I'm wondering about what happened to 2024.
And I agree with every word in there. But as I said...
Do you agree with the sentence that was just quoted at you that seemed to directly contradict what you have been saying for the past 10 minutes?
Zionism changed its objective and goal in the 1930s and agreed reluctantly.
In what way did it change its goals? Because, like, we clearly still see colonial policy, man. Like, what do you mean? They're right now, they're illegally occupying the West Bank and preparing to annex it by again, this conversation happened over a month ago, but right now the conversation in Israel is about possibly doing a temporary evacuation of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. Meaning a mass ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in the West Bank, so that annexation can happen of the West Bank, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with America, but in America we did that numerous times. But maybe one of the most famous examples of this would have been the Trail of Tears. Famously not a good moment in American history.
Designed to the idea of partitioning the land. And from that point on, the Zionists, a number of times in 37, 47, the year 2008, proposed partitioning Palestine with the Palestinians, and the Palestinians consistently have rejected partition under the Hamas Palestinian.
Man, this is crazy how he is not contradicting the claims he made in the book that Mehdi brought up. Like, how are you this blind to your own words, man?
And under the PLO Fatah as well. They always rejected partition.
Let me ask you this.
That's the truth, the basic truth of the conflict. Zionists
hold on, Benny, let me ask you a question.
Zionists willing to compromise, and the Palestinians always say no.
Benny,
yes, go ahead.
I want to read a quote out to you.
Yes.
You keep saying lots of positive stuff today, sharing, dividing. I want to read a quote to you. There are circumstances in history that justify ethnic cleansing.
Yes.
That is not a quote from Slobodan
Jesus Christ.
Milosevic.
Yes.
That is not a quote from a Rwandan genocide.
It's
your quote.
Yeah.
And a lot.
Jesus Christ, dude. What? How do you hold your head up after that? How do you say something that openly horrific and you're like, yeah, I said that. Yes, and?
A lot of your critics say you no longer just document ethnic cleansing, you apologize for it as well.
What's the context of what I quote? What you're
the context is you're asked, do you condemn what they did in 1948, Zionist militias? You say no. You're asked, they perpetrated ethnic cleansing. You say there are circumstances in history that justify ethnic cleansing.
What was the circumstance I'm talking about?
You say, I know that this term I'm reading your quote. I know that this term is completely negative, but when the choice is between ethnic cleansing and genocide, the annihilation of your people, I prefer ethnic cleansing.
So the Jews understood in 48, the Jews were under threat of annihilation by the Arabs, and that, in my view.
So you are justified in doing an ethnic cleansing. That's insane.
It has been 2 years, Jack. I have sent Ravens, Jack. Why have you not responded to Ravens, Jack?
Cassifel, thank you for resubscribing and for being subscribed for 2 years. And I don't speak Raven, so I got a bit confused. I'm sorry. But thank you for supporting the stream. Hope you're doing well.
View, legitimized, justified cleansing Arabs from Palestine.
You know, I just want to point out the irony here, which is that the Nazis would have claimed and did claim the same thing. The Nazis claimed that Jewish people were an existential threat to Germany and to the German way of life, and that's why they needed to be destroyed. That was their claim. Was it true? No. But that didn't matter. That was their claim. And he's just reproducing that. And he's a historian. He should know this. He should know this.
The Jews were threatened with death by a second genocide after the Nazi genocide.
The Hutus said exactly the same thing about
every group that perpetrates a genocide claims that the people that they are genociding are an existential threat. That is the key component.
the Tutsis in 1994.
They were talking about the Zionists.
No, they said we can ethnically cleanse and kill these people because they're threatening us.
No,
right? Everybody who's ever done bad things says we're doing it defensively, right?
I didn't say threatening. I said the Arabs of Palestine attacked the Jewish community in Palestine from 1947 on.
That doesn't justify ethnic cleansing,
They were joined.
You can't justify a war crime, a crime against humanity.
Ethnic cleansing is not regarded as a war crime by any.
So you're fine with it?
It's not a matter of fine. It's not a happy event.
Understand.
We're not. I prefer ethnic cleansing of the other to being massacred my own people. Yes.
You see, we had to do the ethnic cleansing, otherwise they would have killed all of us. Were the mothers and the babies going to kill you? How? How exactly?
Sure.
Even if that involves innocent people being driven from their homes and not allowed to come back.
Yes. If you're under threat,
how does that fit with Zionists wanted to share the land?
Because
dude, how? We're only 15 minutes in. How does this conversation move forward from here? This is insane.
Of course, the Zionists wanted. No, you're mixing up the times, the chronology. The Zionists were willing to share the land. The Arabs said no. The Arabs attacked them. And from that point on, the Jews, to defend themselves properly.
Did all of the Arabs attack the Jews? Were there not like merchants and housekeepers and farmers and children? Were the children attacking? Were the babies crawling aggressively towards these people? No. Come on, man. What are you doing here? This is literal dehumanization at work.
They would have to drive out Arabs from certain areas from which the Arabs were attacking the Jewish.
So it was a pragmatic thing in the heat of war.
It wasn't ideological, it was pragmatic.
Even though you yourself say that transfer was inevitable and inbuilt into Zionism. Your words.
Dude, how do you write books upon books on this? And contradict yourself this badly. This is wild. He's cooked. We're only 15 minutes in.
It depends what you mean by transfer. A transfer
depends what you mean by transfer. You're the one using the euphemism.
It depends. No. It depends what part of the population we're talking about. Total transfer was never any part of Zionist policy.
Partial transfer.
A partial transfer from areas in which the Jews wanted to establish their state in part of Palestine, and from which the Arabs were busy attacking the Jews.
Okay, I want to bring in the panel. Before I do, a lot of talk about whether Zionism is a form of colonialism. If I said to you Zionism is something colonial, what would you say to that?
I would say there's some partial truth in it, but on large it's wrong. It's not a correct interpretation.
Those are Theodore
Zionism.
Herzl's words. He wrote a letter to Cecil Rhodes, the founder of Rhodesia in Zimbabwe. He said it's something colonial.
Okay.
So maybe you should take it up with the founder of Zionism.
I can't take it up with Herzl.
Okay.
Herzl may have said that in order to...
Not may, he did say that.
Ingratiate... No, in an effort to ingratiate himself with the great colonizer.
The thing is, I believe Benny Morris is a smart man. He's sighing that deeply because he's upset that he's being confronted with a contradiction he already knows.
Rhodes, it's possible. That's not the point. The point is...
Want to hear that sigh again? Yes.
Ingratiate, no, with Herzl.
Okay.
Herzl...
So maybe you should take it up with the founder of Zionism.
I can't take it up with Herzl.
Okay. Cecil Rhodes, the founder of Rhodesia in Zimbabwe. He said it's something colonial.
Okay.
So maybe you should take it up with the founder of
I
Zionism.
can't take it up with Herzl.
Okay.
Herzl may have said that in order to
he did say that, but-
ingratiate. No, in an effort to ingratiate himself with the great colonizer, Rhodes. It's possible. That's not the point. The point is
this is why I don't understand, Benny. Zionism.
You don't allow me to finish sentences.
I do. Please.
No, you
please
do.
finish
You
the sentence. Please finish the sentence.
continuously interrupt.
Please.
You're trying to do what Trump did to Biden.
Wow, I've never been compared to Trump before. That's a first. But you've actually eaten up more time saying that, so please finish your sentence.
In order to mess up his sentences. Zionism intended to liberate the Jews from the alienation and oppression under which they lived in Eastern Europe, also later Central Europe, by establishing a state of the Jews, with a majority of Jews, with Jews ruling over themselves. They ended up in part realizing that dream at the expense of Palestinians. This is correct.
Okay.
This is what happened,
Good.
as it turned out.
We'll end on a point of agreement and bring in our panel. We have Diana Boutou, who's a Palestinian lawyer in Israel, former advisor to the PLO.
All right, before we jump into this second part here, just want to say, this is crazy. The fact that Benny Morris is educated on this, he's made it his life's work to talk about like history, and specifically the history of this region of the world, and the fact that he knows he's full of shit. You can hear how he sighs when something he already knows contradicts his point that he's even said and written about in the past is brought up. He's sighing not because like he was wrong then and right now. He's sighing because it's inconvenient to confront him with that contradiction. We're literally seeing the mental dissonance play out. It's really like almost singular how it is manifesting here. Now, folks, we've been going for 3.5 hours. If you've been enjoying the show or getting anything out of this, learning, as we all are constantly together, please hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Consider sharing the stream with your friends, your family, your relatives, your dogs, and your cats. And please consider supporting the stream with subs, donos, memberships, etc. Because this show is brought to you by you guys. Like, you make this show possible. Without your support, without your subs, your donos, etc., I would not be able to make this show. I wouldn't be able to stay up until 2:30 in the morning doing a late night. Is this a podcast? Live stream? I don't know. What do the kids call it these days? The Skibbity Riz Ohios? Whatever I'm doing. I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. So consider supporting stream. I shared it with our dog. She said it was pretty rough. Well played. Well played. Well played. God. Is this the late night show with Riverboat Jack? Kinda. It's kind of what I do. Me and my cat enjoy the stream. Hell yeah, Cosmic Quibble. Let's go. Okay. With that being said, consider supporting stream, and let's continue. Here we go.
Emmanuel Navon is an international relations lecturer at Tel Aviv University. Daniel Levy is a former Israeli peace negotiator, president of the U.S. Middle East Peace Project.
Yeah, honestly, logic. Benny Morris lost the second he agreed to be on this show.
Diana, I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about genocide, because we started the show talking about genocide. Benny very adamantly says it's absurd. There's many definitions. You're a lawyer. What do you make of that?
Look, Benny is exactly what I expect him to be, which is a genocide denier and a genocide apologist. Every human rights organization has been defining this as a genocide. We have the ICJ that has come out and said that there's plausible case for genocide, and yet we're...
I feel like we need a... feel like we need
to believe the Israelis, the only people who say that it isn't a genocide. Israel's allowed to be a colonizer. Israel's allowed to do what it pleases, and that Palestinians just have to sit by idly and take it. And this is the fundamental problem with Zionism. But we, Palestinians, are the ones who feel Zionism on our bodies. We paid for it with our lives. We paid for it with our land. This attempt to redefine Zionism will go nowhere because you know, and the world knows, it's a
Hold on, I'm going to bring in all the panel. Then I'll
it's a colonial.
Well done. Bring in the heat of the people's court. The people. Iridescent Kitten, thank you very much for the $5 dono. Thank you for answering the call to support stream. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you.
Emmanuel, you teach international relations in Israel. Is there a recognition there that a lot of the world governments, allies of Israel, as well as the usual human rights groups, are very critical, at a minimum, of the way that Israel has prosecuted what's going on in Gaza?
Well, first of all, Diana said we're feeling Zionism. You're right, you're feeling it, because the only place in the Middle East where Arabs are free is Israel.
Okay. We won't even engage with like the Jim Crow laws in Israel. Okay.
And so the freedom that you have, Diana, is because the only country in the Middle East where there is freedom is the state of Israel, from which you benefit, and you should be thankful for it.
I'm not grateful at all.
Because the only country in the Middle East where...
Imagine saying that to like a Palestinian. Like most Palestinians have lost like friends or family because like the Israeli military or Israeli settlers sanctioned by the Israeli government have killed them. Like, yeah, be thankful, okay? Be thankful you have your life.
Arabs can elect their officials,
Disgusting.
be elected, be judges at the Supreme Court, be president of a university. The only free country in the Middle East is Israel.
Dan, do you want to respond?
Can they live in a neighborhood if it's judged to be, you know... let me put it this way. Are they free to live in any neighborhood in Israel? It's a trick question because the answer is no, they're not. Because many neighborhoods and the local areas have laws or regulations or zoning issues that stipulate that, hey, you can only live here if it preserves the Jewish character of the neighborhood. Meaning that they aren't going to sell homes to Palestinians. They aren't going to sell land to Arabs. They aren't going to change the inherent Jewish character, in their view, of the neighborhood or land. Meaning, effectively, there are no-go zones for you if you are Arab or Palestinian. You know, like it's pretty disgusting. And we had this in America too, by the way. We called it Jim Crow. We called it, you know, an extension of slavery. They had it in South Africa too, and they called it apartheid.
To that?
I find it staggering that the gentleman to my right is telling the Palestinian citizen of Israel how she is experiencing the reality under which she lives. It's a staggering moment for me. Now, you know, there were different strands to Zionism, okay? There was a cultural Zionism, there was a binational Zionism. This could have gone in different directions. From the perspective of 2024, 75 plus years in, the idea that this is just something benign doesn't match with the reality that has been lived. Now, I would say it's clear what this has meant for Palestinians, but I would argue it's not doing what was written on the tin for Jews either. I don't think either Israeli Jewish or global Jewish safety is best served by the actions we see day in, day out in Gaza.
True. You know, pursuing this expansionist colonial policy comes at the expense of Israel's security. Like every day that is spent trying to occupy or, you know, ethnically cleanse Gaza, or occupy or ethnically cleanse the occupied territories of the West Bank, every day that goes by destabilizes the region and risks a regional war. Which I shouldn't have to point out, but that's not really in the best interests of the Israeli people.
Would you like to respond to what you've heard from the panel?
Please. I think there's a misunderstanding here. There is a separation between Israel and the West Bank, Israel and the occupied territory largely populated by the Palestinians and the State of Israel. In Israel itself, there is a rule of law. There is generally
in the occupied territories are what are they living under? Is it occupation? Are they being illegally occupied? Are they not subject to the same laws? Can they be held for crimes indefinitely without a trial? Yeah, they can be, actually. Is there travel between different cities, often curtailed by checkpoints and settlers? Oh, yeah, that's true, actually.
Equality between the Jews and the Arabs, and you're misrepresenting it when you say that they are persecuted, and he's damn right in what he says. All the Arab states are dictatorships which do not allow their citizens any freedom, and Israeli Arabs enjoy most of the rights. They may be discriminated against in certain things, but they may enjoy.
What things are they discriminated against in Benny? Yeah, sure, they may be discriminated against in some things, but like you have most of the same rights. Yeah, I mean, you got it pretty fucking good, okay? You guys got most of the same rights. And you know, it'd be a shame if something would have happened to you if you were to advocate for the same amounts of rights. Be a damn shame somebody had an armored bulldozer nearby.
Certain rights which Jews do not have, for instance, not serving 3 years, wasting 3 years in the army, for example. Israeli Arabs don't do.
This is literally like arguing this is like what racists in like the 1860s in America were arguing, man. Like, well, freed blacks have some rights. For example, they don't have to serve in the Continental Army. Why, they have it pretty good. Like literally, we're too racist to let them into our armed forces. So you know, like they got it pretty good. They got a good deal.
We don't want to do
No.
yes.
It's fine.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure most Palestinians are desperate to serve in the Israeli military right now.
I'm sure you're right.
Thank you for leaving us from
One should be true. In pre-1967 Zionism in Israel, it was not a colonial enterprise. In the West Bank, there is a colonizing and colonial.
Every day I wake up and remember monsters exist in this world. Thank you for being a light in the dark. Wide peepo hug.
Oh, Drago Vitri Cordes, thank you for the tier 3 sub. I appreciate it so goddamn much. Thank you. I hope you're doing all right. How are you doing, lovely? I knew someone for 15 years, and one day he got drunk and told me slaves didn't all have it so bad. Yeah, there's definitely a persistent narrative in America where people say, slaves loved being enslaved. And you'll notice it also exists in the UK as well. Kept alive, of course, by one J.K. Rowling, who basically wrote every single bit of Southern slave apologia as part of the fictional world building she made for house elves. They just love being slaves. In fact, they can't survive without being slaves. They need to be enslaved. You just don't get it, you silly gooses. Yeah, Corey Malleus. Yeah, like slaves have it pretty good. They don't have to pay taxes. You know, they don't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from. But right, like that literally the argument of like pro-slavery folks in the South.
Framework, which
yeah,
is
it was Spew TG Durza.
even
TJ.
apartheid-like in its actual workings. But in pre-1967,
Are you?
1967, Zionism and Israel, it was not a colonial enterprise. In the West Bank, there is a colonizing and colonial framework, which is even apartheid-like in its actual workings.
Wow, what an amazing concession from Benny Morris. Yeah, sure, we're doing apartheid, but you know, only in the West Bank. Ignore the part where I already acknowledged we have a two-tiered society in Israel proper as well.
But in pre-1967 Israel, that was not the case. And for the first 100 years or so of Zionism, it wasn't a colonial venture.
Mr. Malachite, is this guy saying that the Israeli government is giving privilege to Arabs over Jews? Yes.
It wasn't a venture of an extension of an imperial. Let me just define colonialism, since you're so busy defining genocide. Imperialism and colonialism were matched together, in which an empire sent its children to dominate and take over a third world country and exploit its riches and its people. This is not what Israel did until 1967.
Emmanuel, do you agree?
Well, you have to understand, we weren't doing imperialism until 1967, and then we started. We just never stopped. It's been 58 years of colonialism, or 68 years of colonialism. Whatever. It's been a long time of colonialism, but they had it coming because they're Arabs.
I agree with Benny that there is a colonial aspect and apartheid.
These are like the worst arguments. He's literally sideshow bobbing, being a vicious, like, anti-Palestinian racist.
Aspect to the occupied West Bank?
No. Zionism is a national liberation movement that freed its land from Arab Muslim colonialism. How do you think Islam expanded itself?
He's a lecturer of diplomatic studies at Tel Aviv University. Dog. Yeah, you really got to liberate the occupied West Bank from all of those poor olive farmers. Man, yeah, they're a real big threat. You got to liberate that land, man.
From the Arab Peninsula to Indonesia, from Indonesia to Morocco, not from the Holy Spirit. This was conquest and colonialism.
Okay, we are out of time, and I'm going to give Diana the last word before we take a break.
Okay, so now we have a Nakba denier and a Nakba apologist,
proud denier,
as well as a genocide denier.
You can't deny that it happened. You just think it was good that it happened. Like, the Nakba was documented. We have pictures and video of it happening. Like, that, it verifiably happened. The difference is that you just think it was good that it happened. You think that kicking hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children out of their homes and sending them to wander the world is good. You think that was good.
Genocide apologists. The point of the matter is that Palestinians have always paid the price for Israel's colonial adventures. My family hails for hundreds of years from Palestine. And what happened in 1948 was my family was ethnically cleansed from Palestine.
Where?
From Al-Mjadel. Never able to return back to their home. My father died unable to return back to his village because of the colonialism that is called Zionism. There is no place for Zionism.
We are way over on time. Daniel, 30 seconds. You want to come in?
What's remarkable to me is we've gone from denying the Nakba, and Benny Morris actually helped get past that, to threatening a second Nakba, and that's the narrative in Israel today, without going through what's most necessary, which is acknowledging and healing and redressing and Palestinians actually getting their rights. Because without that, not only will Palestinians never see peace and security and the achievement of freedom, but Jewish Israelis will always live in the knowledge that that wrong will create a blowback and there's no security.
That is it for part one of Head to Head with our special guest.
We're only halfway through.
Yes, Benny Morris. In part two, we'll be talking about what is happening inside of Israeli society. We'll be talking a bit more about Benny Morris's views, and we'll hear from our, I was going to say patient audience at Conway Hall, but they're not so patient tonight. That's in part two of Head to Head.
God damn. Absolutely. Unspeakable levels of brain damage have been done to the Israeli population to get them, like, to march lockstep with this genocidal rhetoric. Good night, Elenita Express. Well, folks, we've been covering this video for so long now, but we gotta see it through. But consider dropping the subs, the donos, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, hit the buttons, then help do the things that support the stream and allow me to continue making content. With that, let's continue.
Welcome back to Head on Al Jazeera English. I'm with my guest, Benny Morris, one of Israel's most famous historians. We have a panel of experts, and we have a live audience here in London's Conway Hall, who we will be hearing from shortly. Benny Morris, in part one of the show, we argued, you and I, about genocide, about ethnic cleansing, about the Nakba. Can we start part two, Benny, by agreeing, both of us, on something that Israel has seen in recent years, a pretty...
Patrick Lucas, thank you for gifting a membership over on YouTube. I very, very much appreciate that.
Serious, severe, brazen shift to the right, some would say far right, with the likes of Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir in the cabinet, a lot of fanatical settlers inciting violence in the occupied West Bank. According to some polls, 60% of Israeli Jews say it's better for there to be segregation between the two societies, 48%.
I'm sorry, 60%?
60% of Israeli Jews say it's better for there to be segregation between the two societies. 48%, according to one poll a few years ago, supported the expulsion of Palestinian citizens of Israel.
Almost half? Wait, what year? I'm sorry, this is insane.
48%, according to one poll a few years ago, supported the expulsion of Palestinian citizens of
48%, a poll from a few years ago. What would a poll right now say? Oh my God. Oh, Dragonfly, we're watching Mehdi Hasan talk with Benny Morris, and it's absolutely a fascinating level of insight into, like, the mindset and justification for a genocide.
Israel. What is going on in Israel?
Israel has turned definitely to the right. It's partly to do with demography. More religious people are born, more than secular people. I would say also, unfortunately, more Sephardi people are born than Ashkenazi secular people. I would say that in addition to the demographic shift, which has taken place in the last 20, 30, 40 years, continuous Arab terrorism and Arab reluctance to reach a compromise has also driven Israelis to the right.
You've also been critical of the far right in Israel, as we just heard you say.
I'm very critical.
You've called
How are you critical of the far right, and yet you've been justifying genocide and apartheid conditions for the first almost 25 minutes of this? Critical on what? Financial, fiscal responsibility? Like what? This man is the most liberal Israeli. That very well might be true. In his context as like an educated man in Israel, he might be one of the most left-leaning Israeli folks, which is deeply that should like make your blood run cold.
Netanyahu cowardly and incompetent, but you yourself have been criticized by some on the left, both in Israel and abroad, for your own views. And I just want to get through some of them with you, because you've said what many would say are racist things about Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims. You've called them barbarians. You've said they have no moral inhibitions. You've said they ought to be caged. You've said Palestinian citizens of Israel are a time bomb, a fifth column, the emissary of the enemy.
I got the gist.
I know, but the audience need to hear it.
Okay.
You say you're a liberal and you believe in the peace process. A lot of Palestinians would say, how do we make peace with people who say they're liberal Zionists and they think of us in this way?
It's quite a question of quoting out of context, which you are indulging in. Those who blew up buses and restaurants in Israel during the Second Intifada, I'm talking about both Hamas and Fatah terrorists.
Yeah, but you're not limiting your comments to just them. You think all Palestinians should be like ethnically cleansed because of that. Like, your ideology makes it acceptable to you when you see tens of thousands of children being slaughtered as collateral damage. You just don't think that they're as human as Israeli children. They cry the same, man.
I called barbarians and they behaved.
Not just them.
And I did no. I called them barbarians and they behaved like barbarians.
You didn't call all
and
Arabs barbarians?
No, I didn't.
You did actually in 2004 in Haaretz.
God bless Mehdi Hasan, dude. He does his homework, guys. Wait, so this guy's a liberal? Yeah, John Brongus. You need to understand, in the Israeli context, he's considered a lefty. In the Israeli context, Benny Morris is considered a left-leaning Zionist. That he is in fact the best case scenario for a Zionist.
You said the Arab world as it is today is barbarian.
That's true. The Arab world.
That's an oxymoron. Do you know what percentage of Israeli citizens are Zionists? Like guys, we literally just watched Mehdi Hasan quote polling numbers where like almost 70%, or it was either 60 or 70%, believe that Jim Crow apartheid should happen with Palestinians that live inside Israel. Where almost 50% believe that there should be a mass ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Israel. Not just the occupied territories, but Israel proper. Right? That's the context of Israel, where the vast majority believe in ethnic cleansing as a matter of policy. Believe in apartheid as a matter of policy. in that context, this guy is considered a left-leaning individual. Does that mean he's a left-leaning individual in the context of America? No. Fuck no. But that just kind of shows you how far, like, advanced the political brain rot of fascism is in Israel.
I didn't say all Arabs are barbarians. I said the Arab world is barbarian in its behavior.
What does that mean? The Arab world is barbarian?
Have a look.
Well, look, I didn't say that all Arabs are barbarians. I just said that the Arab world is barbarian in nature. Well, I'm sure you could find a couple good ones. Absolutely insane.
Look at Syria, where the regime killed about 500,000 people in its civil war trying to suppress an uprising. Look at Sudan, where the Arabs are busy killing blacks in Darfur. Look at Libya, where they're killing.
Sir, you're not beating the racist allegations here, like, at all. Like, you're not, when I'm not racist. I said Arabs are barbarians, but I only mean that because look at all of the crimes they do. The Arab crime rate is through the roof. Look at all of the crimes. Like, dude, how are you any different from, like, a virulent racist against African Americans? You know, like, how are you any different than, like, the 1350 white supremacist types? Where's the daylight between your position and them? There is none. It's the same position.
Each other, they throw bombs at funeral cortèges. Look at Iraq.
It's totally understandable,
they
Ms.
behave like
Milena.
barbarians.
If somebody said to you, and I would say this is anti-Semitic, if somebody said to you the Jews are barbarians, the Jewish world is barbarian, I think you would agree that's anti-Semitic. And if somebody said, well, I'm not being anti-Semitic because I'm just talking about the IDF.
I don't think it would be anti-Semitic. It would be false. That's the point.
You don't think it would be...
Look, I'm not being bigoted when I say that the Arabs are barbarians. The Arab world is barbaric. I'm not being bigoted. I'm just saying a truth about the world. Hey, that's what every racist thinks they're doing. That every racist that has ever wandered into my chat to, like, talk about how, oh, black people only make up 13% of the population, but they do 50% of the violent crime. And, like, that's how they justify, like, looking down on black people. Like, yeah, you're a racist. You're a racist, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You need to, like, understand that about yourself so you can fix your heart.
It would be anti-Semitic for me to say the Jewish world is barbarian.
It would be false, not
Okay.
necessarily anti-Semitic.
And when you say the Israeli Arabs are a time bomb, they're a potential fifth column. That's all of them. You didn't say some terrorists.
I said
Those are your words.
Israel's Arab minority, which identifies in large measure with the Palestinian cause, is...
Yeah, you think that an entire minority in your country is potentially dangerous, and, you know, given the framework you put forward earlier about what you do with people you deem as a whole dangerous, it seems like you would want to ethnically cleanse the Arabs in your country. That seems kind of like where you're going with this, Benny. Like, actual monster shit.
Is, in the long historical perspective, a potential time bomb. Yes, I would agree with that.
You said they're a potential fifth column.
Or a potential fifth column, yes.
An emissary of the enemy that is among us. This is vicious.
It's not just vicious. It's quite literally recycled Nazi propaganda. This is what fascism does to people, chat. One of the Nazi arguments to support the genocide was that they were undermining the country. They were waging an economic war. They made up all kinds of lies in order to justify their crimes against them, against Jewish people. Like, it's insane to see Benny Morris, a historian who has studied genocide, not make this connection. How do you not do that? It's breathtaking in its ignorance. It's really shocking.
Stuff,
no, I don't remember using the word enemy.
Whether you remember it or not is irrelevant. You said it. Their slide into complete Palestinization has made them an emissary of the enemy that is among us.
During the Second Intifada, when there were riots by Israeli Arabs, blocking of roads, etc., they behaved like an emissary of the enemy. This is correct. It depends on context. You keep quoting things without explaining the context.
I'm not sure there is any context for dismissing an entire people as a fifth column.
Nobody is. Okay, go ahead.
All right, let's talk about some other views of yours, which are some...
Yeah, we're also just not going to fully engage with the fact that he said that Arabs in Israel were undergoing a Palestinianization, i.e. they were becoming too similar to Palestinians. And that's why he viewed them as dangerous. The parallels just are compounding on each other. Like, this is...
What controversial, many would say. You're not just somebody who said some...
You don't actually want any facts from me or any explanations of anything.
You just explained yourself very well. You said the Iraqis who throw bombs.
You just want to accuse.
I'm not accusing, actually. It's not an accusation, it's a fact.
Really
it's not Mehdi Hassan's fault that you wrote things that directly contradict what you're saying.
This isn't really an interview. This is basically blame throwing and an interrogation.
You don't like defending your views?
I don't like defending my views. I'm able to defend my views, but you come up with these quotations which are out of context.
Oh, that's...
You know, I can't help but notice that when you're given the time to explain the context, Benny, that it's not improving the quotes. It's not explaining or making them seem better. You're just kind of digging the grave deeper, man.
Don't explain the historical context.
Everything.
The audience doesn't understand what you're talking about.
I just read the entire quote to you. I read the entire quote to you, Benny.
And then they used the word racist, which you used at the beginning when you introduced this subject.
You said when... Okay, here's something else you said. You said, we're talking about murder in far larger numbers. It's not a matter of money, referring to Palestinians in Israel. It's the society's nature. Yes, I would say that's a racist comment, to say an entire society has a murderous nature.
During the Second Intifada...
This was said in 2019, Benny, not in the Second Intifada. It's not my fault if you can't remember when you said things. In 2019, you said, we're talking about murder. It's the society's nature.
Murder of who?
The murder rates in Israel. You said Arabs have higher murder rates.
Explain to the audience what we're talking about.
I'm sorry to break it to you. That doesn't get you out of it. You said...
See, like, it's just constantly like, aha, you see, it suddenly makes it seem less bad. And it's like, no, it actually seems more bad when you say it.
Let me explain what was going on. The murder rates by Israeli Arabs of their fellow people, basically, not of Jews, but of fellow Arabs, is much, much higher. It's about 100 or 200% higher than the murder rate among Jews. The same applies, incidentally, to the killing of women. The same applies to honor murders, which are called honor killings, when a woman shows too much leg or looks at a man the wrong way. This is...
Yeah, because Israelis would never do that to Palestinians. Don't look up anything about settler violence towards Palestinians, I guess.
unfortunately inherent
Hey,
in
River
Arab
Shards.
societies
How you
in general in the Middle East and
Did he just black on black crime the Palestinians? Yes, 100%.
among Israeli Arabs as well. That's the context.
My problem is there's no
that's true.
context for making
Racist.
sweeping
You
statements.
know that's true.
Let me
And
ask you
you're
this.
a racist.
Let me ask
Is
you
that
this.
true or not?
Let me.
You are a racist.
We will
Is
bring
it
in.
true?
We will bring in
Not
Diana.
racist. Is it
We will
true?
bring in Diana in a
You are a
moment.
racist.
Is it true?
I want to ask one
You
last
are a
question.
racist.
Forget the
through
word
and
racist.
through.
Benny.
Is
You
it
actually
true?
just made a racist
We're talking
comment
about
when you
facts.
said
Benny,
that
I will let Diana
unfortunately there's
respond in a
higher
moment.
birth rate among
I will
the
let. You
Sephardim
can't tell me that you
versus
don't want heckling from the audience and then engage when we're talking. You can't have it both ways. So I'm talking to you. We'll come to the audience.
Okay.
One
I'm heckling the audience.
One last question. You can do what you like.
I'm
One
heckling
last
the
question.
audience.
It's a
Okay.
free country, as they say. Let me ask you this.
I have so much respect for Mehdi Hasan for confronting this naked hatred head on. In a way that most American media is completely unequipped to. Like, Mehdi is able to actually, like, sit in front of this man and engage him effectively. Not just give him a pampering, like, simpering interview, hanging on his every word. It's actually really refreshing to see a journalist ask hard questions.
It's not just the racism that you've been accused of. You've also been accused of warmonger. You just recently wrote a Haaretz column in June where you said Israel should consider nuking Iran to prevent them from...
Most sane Zionist, by the way. I'm doing okay. How you doing? I'm tired. I'm running out of juice. It's 3:15 in the morning. It's late. But I am fascinated by this. I can't look away.
from acquiring nuclear weapons. Not even Benjamin Netanyahu has said that. You've said it.
Well, he's more responsible. He's a prime minister.
So you're irresponsible.
Yes.
I do have to say, what an interesting, this shot. Just a bunch of people with faces of like disgust, and then there's this guy just like.
I mean, nuking an entire country.
That is not what's written in the article. You misquote everything you say.
I asked you a
Almost
question.
everything you say.
It was a question.
Okay, I'll say what the context is.
Please.
Is destroying the Iranian nuclear facilities. That's the context.
With nukes.
Yes, with nukes, but not destroying Iran, as you just said. I said.
They're friendly, not non-destructive nukes. You know, the friendly ones. You might think of nuclear weapons as horribly destructive and full of civilian casualties, events that might poison the land and the air and the water for generations to come, rendering wide swaths of land unlivable. But have you considered friendly nukes? The nukes for children? But not in that way, the friendly kind of nukes that even children can know and love. What's a little fallout among friends, exactly?
You think dropping a nuke on Iran would have limited...
Not on Iran, on...
It's a friendship nuke. A nuke of friendship.
Small nuclear bombs can destroy facilities like Natanz, and you know that.
And you...
It's not to do
I mean,
with-
you've been advocating
it's
this
not-
for 15 years, right?
Just a little nuke. Just a little nuke, guys. I cannot believe this.
Right?
No, I've been advocating an Israeli strike against the Iranian nuclear project because Iran says that its policy is to destroy Israel. If they ever,
But it doesn't have nukes.
If they ever achieve nuclear weaponry, Israel will be in mortal.
But you didn't say that. You said bomb them now. You said in 2008.
No. Now
in 2008,
you're not telling the truth. You know that.
Look, we need to just do a little nuking now in order to, you know, prevent a possible event in the future. And it's just like, have you considered the possibility that Iran wants a nuke so badly because you're openly talking about the need to nuke them right now? Like, it's not rocket science here. Like, part of the reason why North Korea has wanted nukes for so long is because they want to not be invaded. And, you know, when you have neighbors threatening to nuke you, you kind of want to have that same thing so you can achieve a kind of mutually assured destruction, which would then deter any possible aggression in the future.
You didn't call for the nuking. You didn't call for a nuclear strike in 2008 on Iran.
For example, to kind of demonstrate my point, do you think that he would be arguing if Iran currently had a nuke that Israel should nuke Iran? No, because that would start a nuclear exchange. That would be beneficial for literally nobody. Which is why Iran wants a nuke.
No, I didn't.
In
2008, I said Israel should destroy the Iranian nuclear installation.
With a nuclear strike?
No, I didn't say that.
This is my problem, Benny. You keep saying you don't remember.
Exactly. Nucleus. The ethnic cleansing is putting Israel in most danger. Exactly. The colonial policy that Israel has adopted is threatening regional war.
No, I do.
The New York Times, July the 18th, 2008, an Israeli nuclear strike to prevent the Iranians from taking the final steps towards getting the bomb is probable.
I didn't say I supported it. I said it's probable.
You said the alternative is letting Tehran have its bomb. It's very clear what you were supporting. Come on, now who's playing word games?
Israel does not have as part of its policy.
You know, I love that Mehdi Hasan actually does his homework and clearly, like, read all of this guy's articles.
And doesn't announce as its policy the destruction of Iran. But Iran does say that its policy is to destroy Israel, and they are working diligently to get nuclear weapons. And if the Iranians do achieve nuclear weapons, Israel will be finished. That's what the Iranians are aiming at. And using tactical nuclear weapons to destroy the Iranian nuclear installations before they achieve nuclear weaponry, it makes sense to me. It may not make sense to you because you're not.
I mean, do you think Iran would be justified in arguing that they should tactically nuke Israel? Like, are you insane?
Not as an Israeli, so you don't care. But
I'm a human being, so I care about nuclear weapons.
I don't know what you care about. I don't know what you care about.
Well, you just assumed. Let me go to our panel here. We have Diana Boutou, Palestinian lawyer in Israel, former advisor to the PLO. We have Daniel Levy, former Israeli peace negotiator at the US Middle East Project. We have Emmanuel Navon, who is an international relations lecturer at Tel Aviv University. Diana, I've got to bring you in first since we got started earlier. Potential fifth column.
This is exactly the problem, is that he's a racist. He espouses these racist views. That's the problem with Israel. Israel is a society, a country that is based on this idea of Jewish supremacy, and anything that they do or say goes, which means, therefore, that as a Palestinian who lives in that country, who is not enjoying any benefits of so-called democracy, that they get to espouse and tell me how I feel. They get to make statements like we are a fifth column, and they actually treat Palestinians as though they are a fifth column. It's very important, Mehdi, for people to understand that Israel came to us. We didn't immigrate to Israel. Israel's a colonial movement, and as a colonial movement, its aim is to not only get rid of Palestinians, but it's to transform the entire place, to erase and replace.
Okay, Emmanuel,
Can I just say, like, she's carrying herself like a queen. Like, the amount of restraint you must need in order to not, like, just scream in fury at this man who's arguing that, like, his people should be able to nuke others, who's arguing that, like, your people are barbarians who need to be ethnically cleansed. Absolutely. He's literally making arguments that, like, people like her, of her race and background, ethnicity, whatever you want to call it, are lesser than Israelis. That they are a lesser people. That they are subhuman.
I want to ask you this. Do you recognize the shifts that Benny was agreeing on at the start of this segment about what's happening inside of Israeli society?
Well, allow me to respond to what Diana just
Also, this guy might actually be a monster. Like, I feel like he's about to say something even more unhinged.
said. She's not telling the truth. What she's saying is not true. First of all, the Jewish country, I mean, there are over 190 states in the world. Most of them are nation states. It's not about supremacy. It is about national self-determination and freedom. Now, we didn't come to you.
It's about national self-determination and freedom. Something like a two-state solution? Something tells me that's not the direction he's going, though.
It's our land.
No, it's
this
not.
Is a Jewish land.
The way that the state was created was
our
through
land,
the
and
ethnic
first of all, when you
cleansing
take
I'm sorry. How do you start talking about right to self-determination and then try and remove that from the people who are living on territory you're currently occupying?
It's not, I did not interrupt you.
Diana, let him finish his point, Diana.
Okay. First of all, when you say we've been there for hundreds of years, the word Palestine, it's an invention of British colonialism. It was invented in 1920. It did not exist under the Ottoman Empire.
Again,
so when this story starts, it's a colonial invention. So when you say Palestine, and you can't even pronounce it in Arabic because there's no P in Arabic, that's why we say Philistine, right?
There's no J in
We did not conquer.
All right, Emmanuel, I'm going to bring you back to my question and then move on. What do you make of Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir referring to Arabs in the most dehumanizing race? Are you going to deny that as well?
Like every society, we have our extremists.
Okay.
It's
Like every society, we have our extremists, says the guy who's like literally like doing like the equivalent here of like denying war crimes, denying genocide, denying ethnic cleansing. Absolutely wild. We have extremists, not me, but those people are going too far. It's honestly insane.
It's a democracy. I don't agree with them, but we have like
I don't know how guys. There have been there's some disturbing signs of what's going on in Israel, and like when we talk about how fascism is a death cult, like it quite literally, like it is not a non-creative force. It is something that can only destroy, and ultimately destroys itself. Can I find this? I would really like to know. We need an article from... One second. I'm trying to find an article right now about the state of Israeli society. Come on. I'm trying to find it here. I'm so frustrated. There was an article recently about how Israel's policy relating to like its internal stability. Maybe I can find it here. No, okay. All right, never mind. Oh, wait. Excellent. Found it. Here we go. Here we go. Found it. Oh man, I would really like this article to not be paywalled. Jesus Christ. Real quick. Here we go. Just take a look here. This is an article titled, "Israel will collapse within a year if the war of attrition against Hamas and Hezbollah continues." This article was published a couple weeks ago by one Yitzhak Brick, who is an Israeli general. Okay? This is not like some hippy dippy like nonsense from some guy who's not at all related to the events that are ongoing. He's a general for the IDF. And let's see here. I'm just going to read a bit of it here. Most of the pretentious declarations made by Defense Minister Yoav Gallant throughout the war in Gaza have been proven to be groundless. After the occupation of Gaza City, he said Israel was in total control of the city and its tunnels, and within a short time, Hamas would surrender. After the occupation of Khan Yunis, he claimed that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was running in the tunnels by himself and had lost control of his men, and within a few days he would be caught. With these pronouncements, Gallant, along with his colleagues, IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has been throwing dust in the eyes of the Israeli public. Recently, it appears that Gallant has begun to sober up. When the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, he declared the concept of total victory in Gaza is nonsense. And it seems that he has begun to realize that failing to reach a hostage deal with Hamas would lead to a regional war that would put Israel in serious danger. This realization prompted him to call for a discussion in the government or security cabinet intended to warn everyone involved. The apparent goal of the discussion is to ensure the responsibility rests not only on him, but is shared by all the government ministers. I assume that Defense Minister Gallant already understands that the war has lost its purpose. Israel is sinking deeper into the Gazan mud, losing more and more soldiers as they get killed or wounded without any chance of achieving the war's main goal, bringing down Hamas. The country really is galloping towards the edge of an abyss. If the war of attrition against Hamas and Hezbollah continues, Israel will collapse within no more than a year. Terror attacks are intensifying in the West Bank and inside the country. The reservist army is voting with its feet following recurring mobilizations of combat soldiers, and the economy is crashing. Israel has also become a pariah state, prompting economic boycotts and an embargo on arms shipments from various nations. We are also losing our social resilience as the growing hatred between different parts of the nation threatens to ignite and to bring to its destruction from within. Sinwar and Hezbollah leader Hasan Nasrallah understand Israel's dire situation. What Israel could have achieved earlier with a hostage/ceasefire agreement has become impossible due to the new conditions that Netanyahu introduced into the proposed deal. Those involved in the negotiations in Doha claim that they have no maneuvering space to negotiate because their hands are tied, which, by the way, is absolutely true. Netanyahu keeps introducing more and more bullshit into the negotiations. Right now, the current thing he's thrown in as a wrench into the negotiating process is that he's now saying that the IDF needs to control the southern border crossing of Gaza and have IDF troops stationed in Egypt, which is not a tenable idea to the Egyptians. They don't want the IDF in Egypt. Not at all. Like, it's laughably transparent how Netanyahu is trying to sabotage these. Yeah, they want the IDF to have complete control over the border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. That is untenable. In light of the new situation, a threat by Iran and Hezbollah to attack Israel in response of the killing of 2 senior officials is materializing in the region. The use of assassinations is a step threatening to ignite the entire Middle East, decided upon by 3 pyromaniacs, Netanyahu, Gallant, and Chief of Staff Halevi, without thinking about the significance of their irresponsible decisions. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. All of the paths chosen by Israel's political and military leadership are leading the country down a slippery slope. One dictator controls the fate of the country, and a flock of sheep follow him blindly. Netanyahu decided to, quote, die with the Philistines, unquote, in this case, the citizens of Israel, only to retain his power. He's lost his humanity, basic morality, norms, values, and responsibility for Israel's security. Only replacing him and his cronies as soon as possible can save the country. Israel has entered an existential tailspin that could soon reach a point of no return. This entire thing was written by, and there's more to it. If you can get behind the paywall, I would recommend reading it. But this entire thing was written by Major General Yitzhak Brick. And he served in the Armored Corps as a brigade, division, and troop commander, and was commander of the IDF military colleges. So, this is not some, this is not some guy who has no insight into this situation whatsoever. Well, unfortunately with Otro, we're in the unfortunate position of having to deal with the reality that Likud, as a political organization, has created an army of Netanyahus. Like, even if you got rid of Benjamin Netanyahu, there are 10 others just as, if not more, bloodthirsty, ready to replace him. And I don't know that there is any force currently active in Israeli politics that can put a stop to the course that they are currently on. I think there is only one possible way to de-escalate things and possibly stop this like fascistic death spiral that Israel's in, and that's if the United States steps in to try and force a ceasefire. So, anyway, back to this.
Every society, we have our extremists. And
Yours are in government.
Yes, well, I didn't vote for this government. I wish they were not in the government.
Okay. Daniel hasn't spoken. Daniel Levy.
When I was in a Zionist youth movement and president of the World Junior Jewish Students, being pumped with the talking points and the propaganda points, I really think they were more sophisticated, and I may be misremembering this. I genuinely cannot believe that this is what now constitutes an Israeli attempt at defending and putting your best foot forward. But then I look at the reality in Israel today, and of course that's what it should look like, because what's the reality we're living in? And let me take two snapshots. First of all, it's really not that surprising that we've got to this point when you consider the impunity with which the external community and Israel's allies and the West and the US treat Israel, despite the litany, the entire spectrum of violations of international law and of human rights. And yet every time there's an excuse, there's a veto at the United Nations, and then there's more arms. And in that respect, don't expect Israelis to come up with better talking points when they don't have to, because you're willing to run cover for them and create completely the wrong incentive structure.
Please respond.
I must protest. You've brought three people in a panel, two of whom are pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionist.
That's the purpose of the panel, yes.
It's supposed to be two against one. That's the way you've organized this.
Yes, we did ask you to watch the show before you came in.
I consider myself pro-Jewish,
no, you're not
pro-Palestinian, pro-human. I consider myself...
What a man. Good dude.
Let me finish. Please. Let me finish. You are a pro-Palestinian propagandist. That's all you've become, just so that you know that.
Let's go around the audience. We're going to try and see where we've got some hands up. We're going to go to gentleman here, third row with the jacket on.
Just if you could say something more from an Israeli perspective in terms of the threat they face from Hamas as an Islamist movement which is pledged to slaughter all the Jews in Israel. That's what it says in its charter, never revoked charter. If you could explain that in more detail, please.
The Hamas is a small organization with a small army of terrorists. It doesn't represent, in my view, an existential threat to Israel.
Oh. So it's not... Is it a genocide then? Like, were they doing an act of genocide against Israel? Or was it just a terrorist attack? Is it this seems to contradict everything he just said. Like, if it's not an existential threat, how on earth are you justifying, 20,000 children being killed in pursuit of this?
But as part of the larger Muslim radical Arab world.
When you say if the U.S. steps in, do you mean sanctions and cessation of providing Israel with weapons, or U.S. troops on the ground? I mean sanctions and cessation of providing Israel with weapons, and also using diplomatic back channels. I firmly believe that if the United States sanctioned or ceased providing material aid to Israel until it changed its policies, I think that they would change it. Like it would be like an almost overnight change in Israeli policy. I don't like they cannot afford losing the good graces of the world's preeminent superpower that protects them diplomatically, economically, and militarily. Like they cannot survive without being propped up in that way. Good night, Dragonfly. Don't worry, this will be a segment.
That part of it, including Iran, together they do represent an existential threat to Israel. Israel is not fighting merely the Hamas, it's fighting the Houthis, it's fighting militias in Syria and Iraq, it's fighting the Hezbollah, orchestrated by the Iranians at the moment, which wants to destroy Israel, yes.
Lady here in the third row on the second.
My question is to Diana or Daniel, because I want an honest and truthful answer. Given the decades-long brutality against the Palestinians by the Israeli government without much regard for international law or consequences, should we have seen the escalation in this genocide coming? And what could be the global implications when states disregard international law to justify and even normalize genocide?
Diana, briefly.
We've gotten to a point in this world where the world tells us that nothing can justify October 7th, and yet everything that Israel has done since October 7th can be justified by October 7th. That's a distorted world, and we have to understand what this occupation has meant. It's been violent from day one. The Nakba was violent, and what we're seeing today is a continuation of that Nakba. For world order to be restored, we need to have a system where all states are held to account, not where we get to have a country that says it's time to bomb.
Yeah, it turns out international law needs to actually mean something.
Iran, because they might have a nuclear weapon. Big secret, Israel has a nuclear weapon too.
Gentleman in the brown jacket, and then the gentleman here in the blue jumper.
I know that we're on Al Jazeera, a Qatari station. What do we think about the fact that Qatar has funded Hamas for so long, persecuting Gazan Palestinians? And also, we haven't heard one mention of the 120 hostages still being kept. And what pressure could Qatar be putting on Hamas to release those hostages immediately, regardless of all the rest of this?
Well, Qatar has been supporting the Hamas for at least a decade, with money, propaganda, etc., probably using Al Jazeera also in that fashion. This should end.
Yeah, the Houthis are like a bigger threat to like Saudi Arabia, like frankly, like they're not at all really a threat to Israel.
I think normal states shouldn't support what the world regards, or at least the Western world regards uniformly as a terrorist organization. It's true that Hamas is still holding 120 Israeli hostages, women, children, octogenarians.
Fewer today, largely due to the actions of Israel, but you know, you gotta keep gotta keep bombing those civilians. Am I right?
2-year-olds and whatever. They had 250 in the beginning. Now it's been reduced to 120. Many of them killed by Hamas people. And
many also shot and bombed by Israel.
Many of them killed by Hamas.
And by Israelis.
And by Israelis. Also, Israelis also killed some of the hostages. Hopefully they will be released.
We hope they will be released. I would just say one thing. Why did the Israeli government prop up Hamas for so long and encourage Qatar to send money to Gaza?
Stupidly. Out of...
Like, even Benny Morris is like, yeah, Israel really created Hamas here. Listen how quickly he responds to that.
Prop up Hamas. We hope they will be released. I would just say one thing. Why did the Israeli government prop up Hamas for so long and encourage Qatar to send money to Gaza?
Stupidly. They're not hearing my answer.
I'm just wondering.
You asked the question, so let me answer.
You give a long answer to that.
The answer is that the Israeli government under Netanyahu behaved stupidly, and this was part of the incompetence of...
Yeah, his main problem here is, like, the colonial project isn't efficient enough.
Of Netanyahu.
I think it was incompetence. Let's go to the gentleman here in the blue jumper. Let's take his microphone.
I'm Martin Shaw, and I wrote a book called What is Genocide?
Perfect person. What is genocide,
I wanted to bring
Martin?
Benny back to Gaza, because he said it's a war, and there's collateral damage, and that Hamas knew. And that may be true. But, I mean, the real point is that Israel knew, isn't it, that if you bend the rules of war so that 100 people can be killed for one militant, if you do that thousands and thousands of times with 2,000-pound bombs, you know that the whole of Gaza is going to be a ruin. You know.
What an absolute Chad. Absolute Chad behavior here. Like, yeah. If you manipulate the language that you're using and you're saying, oh, well, you know, they hide behind human shields, so we're justified in killing as many human shields as we do, but that you're getting one militant for every 100 or every 10 civilians, like you're going to like wipe out the population.
Know that you're going to destroy that society, and that the only way we can understand that in an overall sense is not a series of war crimes. It is one big crime, and I think the name for that is genocide.
Absolutely.
Do you want to respond to that? Hold on, let him respond.
I think I've already made the point. The Hamas, when it attacked Israel on the 7th of October, knew that Israel would retaliate with bombing and knew that lots of Gazan civilians would die. They were
Yeah, but that doesn't absolve Israel of the responsibility of how they responded. Like, you can't be like, ah, well, you see, you knew that that person you punched in the face would respond violently. Therefore, you're responsible if the person you punched in the face pulls out a gun and murders your entire family. Like, that's not how that works, man. Like, pretty clearly.
They were hoping for that because that looks good on Western television images. But they say that killing a lot of Gaza civilians is good because they go to heaven. They become martyrs. So this is...
Again, that has nothing to do with how Israel chooses to respond.
This is allowed.
Benny, can I ask you a question? Can I hold on?
Did I say something wrong?
No, I just want to follow your logic here.
Hamas knew that.
I just want to follow your logic. Your argument is Hamas knew that if they did this, we'd do a genocide, so we did a genocide.
Not genocide, no. You're misusing.
Like they knew that we would come and kill lots of people, so we did. It's a very weird argument.
They knew that Israel would kill lots of Gazans.
They knew that Israel would kill lots of Gazans. Not a great
Yes, they knew that. Going after the Hamas, they knew that lots of Gazan civilians would be killed, and they were happy with this because of international pressure which would result.
Okay, we're running out of time. I want to take a gentleman in the suit. Yes.
He just thinks it's good to kill Palestinians. Like, I feel like that's ultimately what's at the baseline here.
Morris, you say that the ICC should issue an...
Oh, Mr. Anderson, that would be an excellent question. It'd be really nice if Mehdi Hasan asked that question. What I would love to see him. I would love to see Benny Morris asked what he thinks a good exit strategy would be, because it's very clear, I think, to me that Benny Morris doesn't actually believe in an exit strategy here.
Arrest warrant against the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli War Minister, Yoav Gallant. But on the 9th of October, they imposed a total siege on 2.3 million civilians in Gaza, depriving them of water, medicine, food. That is what they're accused of, starvation as a weapon of war, something that the Syrian and the Russian regimes were accused of. Do you condemn that?
Has anybody died in Gaza of starvation? This is...
Yes. Yes, Benny.
This is total nonsense. The Israeli, you want me to answer?
Yes, I do.
But you want me to answer?
But I want some evidence. You can't just say things that are false. I'm not going to let you say that.
The Israeli government, I think the ministers debated whether to cut off water, cut off electricity, etc., etc.
And then they did. Like pretty demonstrably. Like,
They eventually resolved not to do that. And though...
Is Benny Morris stupid? They did it.
Though lots of reporters have been saying, and the United Nations, that Gaza is on the verge of starvation, on the verge of famine, etc., etc.
No, they aren't saying it's on the verge of famine anymore. Since July, they have labeled it a famine. And just real quick, a famine classification is the highest on the IPC scale, phase 5, and occurs when at least 20% of the population faces extreme food shortages. Acute malnutrition rates exceed 30%, meaning that people experience the most extreme and visible form of undernutrition, and 2 out of 2,000 people die from starvation on a daily basis. On a daily basis. Now, there's an estimated 2.1 million, 2.14 million, we'll say. Let's just do a little bit of back of the napkin math here. All right, if you have 2,140,000 people, right? Divide that by 1,000. Now multiply it by 2. All right? Hundreds of people are dying every day in Gaza. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. And this is not even counting like people who are dying underneath like collapsed buildings.
That has not happened.
Benny, how do you know that? How do you know that? Hold on, stop heckling. How do you know that, Benny? And please,
I haven't
talk. You don't
read
just have to
any report of anyone dying of starvation.
There have been many reports.
I haven't read any.
So that makes it nonsense because you haven't read any.
I haven't heard of anybody dying of starvation.
You don't think there's a famine in northern Gaza?
No, I think there's a food problem there. Food
do you think there's a famine in northern Gaza?
I don't know what the word famine means. There is a food problem. There's malnutrition. This I have heard.
But nobody's died. They've all conveniently stayed alive.
As far as I know, nobody has died of starvation in Gaza.
You're a historian.
As far as I know.
I've read quotes from you saying you're a historian. You look at the sources, you find the evidence, and now you're like, I don't know what famine means. I haven't seen anything. I mean, it's a big claims you're making. You should back it up with some evidence.
You should back it up. Tell me a report in which somebody has died of starvation.
Cindy McCain.
Who's Cindy McCain?
Is the head of the World Food Programme. She's the widow.
She said what? She said what?
She's the widow of Senator John McCain, the most pro-Israeli senator of my lifetime.
She said what?
She said northern Gaza is a full-blown famine and that there are children, women and children in skeletal states there.
Did she say somebody died of starvation? I'm asking you.
When someone is telling you that there are firsthand witnesses, eyewitnesses who have seen human skeletons moaning for food, and your response is, well, have they died from starvation yet? There's something there's something wrong. Like, to me, this is like this is like saying no one in the concentration camps is dying of starvation. It's just not true. It's just not true. It's just apologia for mass murder.
Did anybody die of starvation?
Yes, there have been documented cases. Read the newspapers. Read the humanitarian
What you just
agencies.
quoted didn't talk about starvation.
You said there was no famine a moment ago.
I didn't say. I said I don't know what famine
that's
is.
a good.
Yeah, in June 2024, Cindy McCain, the head of the World Food Program, stated children and adults were dying from starvation after being reduced to the, quote, size of a skeleton, unquote.
Good get out, and it's at the core of the discussion. Let's take another question. Gentleman in the green jacket's been waiting a while.
Hi, my question is to Benny. I just want to know, if you were Palestinian, right, and you were born in Palestine, would you, given the circumstances, support a Palestinian's right to resistance in the form that they have?
Instantly. Yeah, of course.
The form I would support Palestinian resistance if I was living under Israeli occupation, yes.
Which is what the Palestinians are.
Yes.
Benny.
This man is full of internal contradictions, and there's not enough therapy on the planet to untangle this.
Benny, we're out of time. It's a very interesting question he posed, very interesting answer. I do want to ask about, because I watched a recent discussion you did, and you were telling your opponent you need to have empathy, you need to put yourself in other people's shoes. So let's just continue on, gentlemen's very good question, I thought. I mean, if you were a kid in Gaza right now, and you saw your home blown up by the Israeli Air Force, you saw your parents incinerated in front of you, you're starving, what's your view of Israel going to be?
It'll probably be very negative, but it might also be negative towards the Hamas who generated this conflict. And
this viewpoint is so wrong-headed. If Hamas is the only means you have of getting a scrap of vengeance for someone who's lost everything, why would, like, what possible reason would that kid or that young man or that, you know, insert anyone have for not trying to take that? They have nothing else.
And led to that home being bombed by Israel.
You think that's what the kid is thinking when he sees his parents killed by an Israeli bomb?
He might think both things.
What would you think if you were that kid?
Probably I would describe the death of his parents to an Israeli bomb and to the Israelis. But I might, on reflection, later think maybe the Hamas shouldn't have slaughtered so many Israelis on the 7th of October, which led to this.
I'm genuinely asking, is that your talking point, or is that, as a human being, that's how you would feel?
As a human being, I think I would feel anger towards those who had just killed my parents, but I think growing up and on reflection, I might think that the Hamas had led to this.
Unspeakable.
Quite the empathy I was looking for, but we will, I mean, if that's your honest answer, I'll take it.
That's my answer.
I appreciate that. Benny Morris, thank you for joining me on the show today. Thank you to our audience in London.
Absolutely insane. Just to cap it off, okay? Here's an article from, well, I guess a month ago, from the Times of Israel. A quote from one Bezalel Smotrich. It may be justified to starve 2 million Gazans, but the world won't let us. And if you think that is like this is one of the most powerful people in Israel. He is one of the war ministers. He's one of the 3 ministers in charge of the war. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich implied on Monday that he believes blocking humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip is justified and moral, even if it causes 2 million civilians to die of hunger. But the international community won't allow that to happen. This is the direct quote. "We bring in aid because there is no choice. We can't, in the current global reality, manage a war. Nobody will let us cause 2 million civilians to die of hunger, even though it might be justified and moral." Like, I don't think the starving Palestinian child who saw their parents murdered by an Israeli bomb is going to stumble across something like this and be like, "Ah, yes, but Hamas is the real problem too." No. When the leaders of the country who are that is murdering you are outright saying, "Actually, we should kill all 2 million people in the Gaza Strip," that would actually be moral and justified. No, I don't think that's the conclusion they're going to come to. They've all gone mad. It is a fervor of genocide. So when I talk about how I like genuinely, I don't think that there is a force internal to Israel that is capable of diverting them from this path of self-destruction that they have set themselves on. The fascist self-immolation that they are undergoing. I truly mean it. They are fixated on. Frankly, they're fixated on a genocide. That's what they want to do. Literally, like, if you're like, "Well, it's not a genocide, it's not a genocide," the leaders of the country are saying publicly. This wasn't, by the way, this wasn't a private quote. Smotrich said this at a conference, at a news conference put together by a media outlet. This wasn't done behind closed doors, guys. This wasn't secret. You effing? No. This was said at a conference in Yad Binyamin, hosted by the right-wing Israel Hayom outlet. And this is being reported in the Times of Israel. There is not, this isn't sustainable. And again, like, there are currently protests against Benjamin Netanyahu, but guys, even if they oust Benjamin Netanyahu, they're not going to replace him with somebody who's better on this issue. It's deeply, deeply disturbing. Anyway, fascism is a death cult, and it will burn out everyone and everything around it. They're just waiting to be stopped. They won't let us. Well, basically, Smotrich is bemoaning the fact that they have to be cleverer about their attempts at eliminating Palestinians. Like, he would prefer if they just, like, could starve them all to death, but instead they have to be, come up with a more creative solution. A more creative final solution, I guess. God. Absolutely wild. But again, hats off to Mehdi Hasan for this incredible conversation and unmasking. Like, truly, I feel like more Americans need to see the unmasking of these Zionist figures like Benny Morris. Like, Benny Morris can talk and seem like just a normal person, you know? So it's excellent work on Mehdi's part to actually like pull the mask off of that and see like the monster underneath.